Emma's small apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the kettle boiling on the stovetop. She had spent the morning baking cookies for her neighbor's birthday, her hands dusted with flour and her mind drifting to her endless list of responsibilities, essays, tuition fees, and her next babysitting shift. When her phone buzzed on the counter, she almost ignored it. Wiping her hands on a towel, she reached for the phone. The message was brief, yet its tone tugged at her heart. "Hi, my name is Mark. I saw your babysitting flyer. I have an emergency interview tomorrow, but no one to watch my daughter, Lily. Please let me know if you're available. I can pay you after I get a job." Emma stared at the words, reading them twice. She could almost feel the desperation behind the text. The plea was familiar, she had seen it in the eyes of many parents she'd worked with, but something about this message felt different. Without hesitating, she typed back. "Hi, Mark. I'd be happy to help. Let's meet this evening to discuss everything. Can you send me your address?" The reply came almost immediately, followed by a thank you so sincere it made Emma smile. Later that day, Emma arrived at the address Mark had given her. The apartment building was modest, its bricks weathered and worn. She could hear children laughing in the distance, their voices carrying through the still evening air. Mark greeted her at the door, his wiry frame stooped slightly as if carrying an invisible weight. His brown eyes were lined with exhaustion, but he smiled warmly. "Hi, Emma. Thanks for coming. Please come in." Emma stepped inside and was struck by the simplicity of the space. The apartment was tidy, though sparsely furnished: a couch with a small tear along the seam, a low coffee table with a stack of coloring books, and a tiny kitchenette that smelled faintly of burnt toast. Lily, a shy 4-year-old with curly brown hair, peeked out from behind her father's leg. Emma crouched to her level, offering a soft smile. "Hi, Lily," she said gently. "I'm Emma. Do you like coloring?" She pulled a small box of crayons from her bag and held it out. Lily's eyes widened as she glanced up at her father for approval. When Mark nodded, she reached out, taking the box with both hands. "Thank you," she whispered. Mark's expression softened as he watched the exchange. "She's been a little shy since." "Well, things have been hard lately," he gestured to the couch. "Please, sit down." As they talked, Mark explained his situation. He had worked at a warehouse for 7 years until budget cuts left him unemployed. With no family nearby and his savings quickly disappearing, he was scrambling to find a new job while caring for Lily full-time. Emma listened intently, her heart aching for both of them. "I'm hoping this interview tomorrow will lead to something," Mark said, his voice faltering. "But I'm not sure how I can make it work if I don't find someone to watch Lily. I don't want to ask for charity, but—" "You don't need to explain," Emma interrupted gently. "I'll babysit Lily tomorrow, and you don't need to worry about payment." Mark's eyes widened, his gratitude quickly turning to embarrassment. "I can't let you do that. It's not fair." "It's not about fair," Emma replied, her voice steady. "It's about helping each other when we can. You're doing everything you can for your daughter, and I'm happy to help." For a moment, Mark was silent. Then he nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Emma said, standing. She glanced at Lily, who was now carefully sorting the crayons into neat rows. "I'll see you both tomorrow." The next morning, Emma arrived bright and early. She brought a small bag filled with puzzles, snacks, and books, determined to make the day enjoyable for Lily. As Mark prepared to leave, his nerves were evident. He glanced at Lily, who clung to his hand, then at Emma. "Are you sure you'll be okay? She can be a bit particular." Emma smiled reassuringly. "We'll be fine. Go nail that interview." Mark hesitated before finally nodding. "Thank you, Emma. I don't know what I'd have done without you." Once he was gone, Emma turned to Lily. "What should we do first? Build a puzzle, or maybe read a story?" Lily looked at her for a long moment before finally whispering, "A story." They spent the morning immersed in picture books, followed by an impromptu baking session where Lily helped mix cookie dough with her tiny hands. By the time Mark returned, Lily was giggling uncontrollably, her face smudged with chocolate. "She's had a great day," Emma said as Mark stepped inside, looking visibly exhausted but hopeful. "How did the interview go?" she asked. "It went okay, I think," he replied cautiously. "They said they'd let me know soon." "That's great," Emma said encouragingly. Before she left, Mark tried to hand her a crumpled $20 bill. She shook her head firmly. "Use it for Lily," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. That night, as Emma sat in her tiny apartment, she reflected on the day. Despite her own challenges, she felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. Helping Mark and Lily had reminded her of the power of small acts of kindness. Over the next few weeks, Emma found herself returning to Mark's apartment more often. Each time Mark had an interview or a meeting, she stepped in to care for Lily. It wasn't long before their initial formality melted into a genuine friendship. For Emma, babysitting was no longer just a way to earn money or help someone in need. Lily's shy demeanor had blossomed into openness, her laughter filling the once quiet apartment. The little girl had taken to calling her Miss Emma, a title she said with a hint of reverence that never failed to make Emma smile. One crisp fall morning, Emma arrived to find Lily sitting on the floor in her pajamas, surrounded by stuffed animals arranged in a perfect circle. "What's going on here?" Emma asked, kneeling beside her. "We're having a meeting," Lily whispered conspiratorially. "Mr. Bear is in charge." Emma grinned and sat cross-legged. "Well, I hope Mr. Bear has some good ideas." Lily giggled, her curly hair bouncing as she placed a toy teacup in Emma's hand. Mark stepped out of the bedroom, adjusting his tie. "She's been planning that meeting since breakfast," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Emma noticed the deep lines of exhaustion on his face. "Big day." Mark nodded. "Another interview. It's for an office assistant position. Not ideal," but he trailed off, his expression heavy with doubt. "It's another opportunity," Emma said, her voice firm. "You've been doing everything right, Mark. It's only a matter of time before something clicks." Mark hesitated, then nodded. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Emma. You've been a lifesaver." Emma waved him off with a smile. "Go impress them. I've got things covered here." That afternoon, after reading Lily a story and helping her build an elaborate block castle, Emma sat down at the small kitchen table and started sketching out some ideas. She had noticed how much Lily loved drawing and crafts, so she decided to create a simple art project for their next visit. As she worked, Lily climbed into the chair beside her, holding a stuffed rabbit tightly. "Miss Emma, do you have a daddy?" she asked suddenly. Emma paused, startled by the question. "I do," she said slowly. "Why do you ask?" "Daddy says you're helping us because you're kind," Lily said, her voice small. "But he says he wishes he could give you something back. Do you need help too?" Emma felt a lump rise in her throat. "That's very sweet of your daddy," she said, placing a hand over Lily's. "But you know what? You and your dad have already given me a lot. Helping you makes me happy." Lily seemed satisfied with this answer and returned to her coloring, but her words lingered in Emma's mind long after. That evening, when Mark returned, his expression was a mix of exhaustion and cautious hope. "How'd it go?" Emma asked as she packed up her things. "It went better than I expected," Mark admitted. "They said I seemed overqualified, but they appreciated my attitude. I'll hear back next week." "That's a good sign," Emma said with a smile. "You're making progress." Mark nodded, though his shoulders still sagged under the weight of uncertainty. As Emma turned to leave, he stopped her. "Emma," he said hesitantly, "I know you've refused payment, but I don't feel right about this. You're doing so much for us." Emma smiled gently. Mark, you're doing everything you can to make a better life for Lily. That's worth more than anything you could pay me. Mark opened his mouth to argue, but Emma held up a hand. Let's call it even, okay? One day, when things get easier, you can pay it forward to someone else. Mark was silent for a long moment before nodding. Thank you, Emma. Really. The following week, Emma arrived at the apartment with a surprise for Lily, a small art set she had picked up on sale. Lily's face lit up when she saw the brightly colored paints and brushes. This is for me, she asked, clutching the box tightly. It's all yours, Emma said with a grin. Now we can make some real masterpieces. Lily squealed with excitement, immediately pulling out the supplies and setting up at the kitchen table. Mark watched from the doorway, his expression a mix of gratitude and wonder. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. Emma shrugged. It's no big deal. Besides, I think she's got a real talent. Mark smiled faintly. You're a rare kind of person, Emma. I hope you know that. That evening, after putting Lily to bed, Mark opened up to Emma about the mounting pressures he was facing. The rent's due in 2 weeks, he admitted, his voice tight with anxiety. If I don't find something soon, I don't know how I'm going to keep this place. Emma's heart ached for him, but she kept her tone steady. You're not alone in this, Mark. We'll figure it out. Mark looked at her, his eyes brimming with unsaid words. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to believe that things might get better. The morning sun filtered through the apartment's thin curtains as Emma walked through the door, carrying a small bag of groceries. She found Mark at the kitchen table, poring over job listings on his laptop. His hair was mussed, and an untouched mug of coffee sat beside him. You're up early, Emma said, setting the bag on the counter. Mark looked up, startled. Yeah, couldn't sleep, he admitted. I've been applying to everything I can find, but most places either don't respond or say I'm not what they're looking for. Emma nodded sympathetically. Sometimes it takes time for the right opportunity to come along. Meanwhile, I picked up a few things for Lily: milk, bread, and some apples. Mark stood, shaking his head. Emma, I can't keep letting you do this. You've already done so much. You'd do the same for me if the roles were reversed, Emma said simply. Besides, Lily loves apples. Consider it a gift for her. Mark hesitated, then sighed. I don't know how you manage to be so selfless. Emma smiled. It's not selfless. I just believe in you. Later that day, Emma and Lily were on the living room floor, surrounded by paints and brushes. Lily was working intently on a picture of her father, the sun shining brightly behind him. Miss Emma, what do you think Daddy's favorite color is? Lily asked, tilting her head thoughtfully. I think it's blue, Emma guessed. Lily grinned. That's what I thought too. I'm going to use blue for his shirt. As they worked, Mark stepped out of the bedroom, his tie already knotted. You two look busy, he said with a small smile. We're making you a surprise, Lily said proudly, holding up her half-finished painting. Mark's expression softened. It's beautiful, sweetheart, he turned to Emma, the smile fading slightly. I have an interview this afternoon. It's for an IT support role. Emma's eyes widened. That's great. Do you feel ready? Mark shrugged. I guess. It's not something I've done before, but I've been watching tutorials online. Maybe they'll see I'm willing to learn. They will, Emma said confidently. Just be yourself. You've got this. That afternoon, while Mark was at his interview, Emma decided to do something she'd been considering for weeks. She picked up her phone and dialed a local career resource center. Hi, she said when someone answered. I'm calling on behalf of a friend. He's been out of work for a while and could use some help with his job search. Do you offer any programs or workshops? The woman on the other end was kind and helpful, listing several options. Emma jotted down notes. feeling a renewed sense of purpose. By the time Mark returned, she had a small packet of information ready for him. "How'd it go?" Emma asked as he walked through the door. Mark set his bag down, his face unreadable. "It went better than I thought," he said cautiously. "They liked that I'm eager to learn, but they said they'll need a few days to decide." "That's a great sign," Emma said, handing him the papers. "What's this?" Mark asked, flipping through the pages. "It's a list of resources I found, places that offer free career workshops, resume help, and even interview coaching. Just in case." Mark looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You don't stop, do you?" Emma shrugged. "I just want to see you succeed." The next few days passed in a blur of cautious optimism and waiting. Mark threw himself into preparing for potential follow-ups, often with Emma's help. One rainy evening, as they sat together at the kitchen table, Lily toddled over with a picture she had drawn. "Daddy? This is for you," she said, handing him a crayon-sketched portrait of their family including Emma. Mark stared at the drawing for a long moment, his throat tightening. "Thank you, sweetheart. This means a lot." Lily beamed and turned to Emma. "You're in our family too," she said matter-of-factly. Emma felt tears prick her eyes as she smiled at the little girl. "Thank you, Lily. That means the world to me." A few days later, Mark received a call that changed everything. It was the tech company offering him the IT support role. Not only that, but they mentioned a $5,000 sign-on bonus to help him get started. When Mark hung up, his hands were trembling. He turned to Emma, who was helping Lily clean up her art supplies. "I got the job," he said, his voice shaking with disbelief. Emma's head snapped up, her face lighting up with joy. "Mark, that's amazing." "They're giving me a sign-on bonus too," Mark added, his voice thick with emotion. "I can pay the rent, stock the fridge, and finally breathe again." Emma rushed to hug him, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "I knew you could do it," she said. Mark hugged her back tightly, overwhelmed by the weight that had finally lifted. The next morning, the apartment buzzed with a new kind of energy. Lily skipped around the living room, singing snippets of a song she'd made up, while Mark was busy on the phone sorting out details for his new job. Emma arrived just as Mark hung up, his face glowing with relief. "Start date confirmed," Mark announced, beaming. "Monday at 9 a.m. Emma clapped her hands. "That's fantastic. I'm so happy for you, Mark. You've worked so hard for this." "Hard work only gets you so far," Mark said, his voice thick with emotion. "If it weren't for you, Emma, I don't know where we'd be right now." Emma shook her head, her cheeks flushing. "You give me too much credit. You made this happen, Mark. I just helped where I could." Mark didn't reply, but his expression spoke volumes. Over the next few days, Mark prepared for his new role with more determination than ever. He studied late into the night, watching online tutorials about troubleshooting and basic IT concepts. Emma continued to babysit Lily, her presence a comforting constant during this exciting but overwhelming transition. On Friday evening, after dinner, Mark called Emma into the living room. Lily was playing quietly in her room, leaving the two adults a rare moment of quiet. "I've been thinking a lot about everything you've done for us," Mark began, his tone serious. Emma tilted her head, curious. "Mark, you don't need to keep thanking me." "Just hear me out," he interrupted gently. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "This is for you." Emma blinked in surprise, taking the envelope hesitantly. "What is it?" "Open it," Mark said, a nervous smile playing at his lips. Inside, Emma found a stack of cash. She looked up at him, her eyes wide. "Mark, what?" "It's half of my sign-on bonus," Mark explained. $2,500. It's not enough to repay everything you've done, but it's a start." Emma's hands trembled as she held the envelope. Mark, I can't accept this. You've worked so hard to get here. You need this for rent, for Lily. You don't understand, Mark said, his voice firm but kind. I wouldn't be standing here with a job, a home, or hope if it weren't for you. This isn't just money. It's gratitude for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Emma felt tears sting her eyes. I never did this expecting anything in return. I know, Mark replied softly, and that's why it's so important to me that you take it. Please, Emma, let me do this for you. Emma stared at the envelope, her heart swelling with emotion. Finally, she nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you, Mark. This means more than I can say. That night, as Emma walked back to her apartment, she couldn't stop thinking about the envelope in her bag. She had already decided to use part of the money for her college tuition, but the rest she planned to set aside for helping others just as she had helped Mark and Lily. The weekend passed in a blur of excitement and preparation. On Sunday evening, Emma stopped by the apartment for one last babysitting session before Mark's first day. Lily was unusually quiet, sitting cross-legged on the floor with her favorite stuffed rabbit. Miss Emma, are you going to leave us now that Daddy has a job? She asked, her voice small. Emma's heart twisted. She knelt beside Lily, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Oh, sweetie, I'm not going anywhere. Your dad's doing amazing things, but I'll always be here if you need me. We're friends, right? Lily nodded, her lips curving into a small smile. Mark watched the exchange from the doorway, his chest tightening. You're more than a friend, Emma, he said quietly. You're family to us now. Emma turned, her eyes brimming with tears. Thank you, Mark. That means everything to me. On Monday morning, Mark walked into the tech company's sleek office building with his head held high. Though nerves buzzed under the surface, he felt ready, armed with the skills he had learned and the unwavering support of Emma and Lily. When he returned home that evening, Lily greeted him at the door with a handmade congratulations card, complete with glitter and crayon hearts. How was it, Daddy? She asked eagerly. Mark smiled, scooping her into his arms. It was great, sweetheart. I think I'm really going to like it there. Emma arrived shortly after to check in. She found Mark and Lily in the living room, laughing together as they played a board game. How'd it go? Emma asked as she set her bag down. Better than I ever could have hoped, Mark replied. The team is supportive, the work is interesting, and they've already started training me on new systems. I feel like I belong there. Emma beamed. I knew you would. Mark leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. You know, Emma, life felt so heavy a few months ago. I didn't think I'd ever see the other side of it. But you showed me that even when things seem impossible, there's always hope. Thank you for everything. Emma placed a hand over her heart. It's been my privilege to be part of your journey, Mark. As they sat together, talking and laughing, the room was filled with a warmth that hadn't been there before, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of kindness.